Hi, I'm Mark Speed. Today I'm talking with Nathan Van Coops, who writes in the time travel genre. Nathan's the author of two time travel novels. In Times Like These was published in November 2013, and the second novel in the series, The Chronothon, was published in February 2015.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome to Dr. How TV, Nathan Van Coops. He's a two-time author of a couple of time travel books. First one that he launched last year was In Times Like These, which is hugely well reviewed. I think something, correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, something in the region of in excess of 45, 50 reviews now on Amazon.
Yeah, I think we just hit 53 yesterday.
So. 53, ladies and gents, and a huge proportion of those are 5-star reviews, and deservedly so. I mean, that's a really, really good novel. We're going to talk about that one in a little bit. And also, you just launched a little bit over a month ago, say 6 weeks ago, you also launched the follow-up, which can also be read as a separate story. That's the Chronothon, and we're going to touch on that a little bit later on too. So Nathan, very welcome. It's the first time we've actually talked, and it's good to see you looking well. So you live in St. Petersburg, Florida, and your diet apparently is composed mainly of tacos, and I understand you've just brushed your teeth after your usual lunchtime load. And of all things, you are an aircraft mechanic, and you learned to fly as a teenager as well. You lived in California, I think, in your early years. Is that right? In national parks.
You cut out there a little bit.
Yeah, we're cutting out slightly. So okay. you learned to fly at a very early age as a teenager, I think. Got your license.
Yeah. So flying and aviation has been a big part of my life growing up. I've been. Amazingly enough, it's 20 years now of being involved in aviation in different capacities. So as a mechanic, as a pilot, and also as an examiner for the FAA, I also give exams to people that are aspiring mechanics. So
wow.
That's fun. Yeah,
that's a pretty responsible job.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun too. Just being around aircraft, if people enjoy it, it's something that people are excited to do. When I'm teaching, I teach a little bit of flying on the side. And it's something that people come to with excitement, and they're ready to learn, and it's always a joy to be a part of that process.
I was going to say I'm hugely envious, actually. I mean, hugely envious. I learnt to fly hang gliders at the age of 16, but never took it further. And I always wanted to do a PPL, but hey, it's so much more expensive over here in Europe. But anyway, let's get on and talk about your writing. You sacrifice. You actually sacrifice real money for this. A lot of people do this. You're down to 4-day working weeks that you can get a 3-day weekend at the writing.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
Yeah,
and that's something that it's tough to do these days. But if you want to really prioritize your writing and make it a lifestyle, that it's something that you have to commit to. And trying to find time to write is the biggest struggle for most writers, especially starting up. I just had a message from a fan today who had emailed me that say he enjoyed the book, and he was wondering a little bit about that, like how you fit it in. He's working on a novel as well, and I think that's a big struggle. And it's just persistence, just keeping at it. Even if it's just a paragraph at a time, whatever gets it done.
It's getting momentum and keeping it there. I mean, the Chronothon is something like 200,000 words, and you did that in a couple of years. I mean, that is a really, really good rate of writing, I would say, especially for the quality of the writing in that novel.
It was I keep telling myself I need to learn to write shorter books, but the story went where it went, and I was excited to get it all in there. And thankfully, I had a very good writing group partner. I meet every week or every other week with a couple of other people, primarily one who's also one of my primary editors, and she, like, having someone else to write with or to be somewhat accountable to, continuously bringing new material, that really helps any writer to get better. And when someone else is looking at it along the way, some people, Stephen King, he writes the whole book before he shows it to anyone. He won't even show his first draft to his wife until it's done. Some people like to write in a vacuum. I personally don't. I think I'm definitely better if I can bounce ideas off of someone along the way. And every writer has their own style, but I think it certainly helps when you have someone waiting there to read new things, and because if you don't provide that, then you're slacking. So it's nice to have a motivation in the form of another writer.
Yeah, okay, so let's begin in with the series then. It started with In Times Like These, which you published about a year ago, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah, end of 2013. It was September of 2013. So
yeah. Yeah, okay. And that's the story really of a bunch of people in their 20s, a bunch of friends in their 20s who have really quite an unfortunate accident, and they get bounced back in time. They very fortunately meet... well, they discover who's kind of responsible, and then the adventure continues from there. I'm not going to do any spoilers here, but what I think is really fantastic about this particular book series, and as I said before, you can read these books either, either one after the other. It doesn't matter. They're strangely for a time travel series, they don't need to be read in chronological order.
right.
Yeah. What I think is absolutely fantastic is you've got the physics right, because as a bit of a nerd, self-confessed, and I think you're probably one too. What's nothing more annoying really than to read a time travel book and just go slap your head and just go, no, that would never happen like that. The physics is just wrong. This person hasn't thought it through. Your time travel, explain how it works, and then we'll ask a few more questions about that.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that I was like you in the sense that when I watched other films or read movies or read books rather that involved time travel, I was very much picking them apart, the plot holes or time loops, things, paradoxes that would come up, and I hated to see those things brushed under the rug. And so I wanted to come up with a premise of time travel that was consistent, whether it was plausible or not is always up for debate because time travel theory will be perfect. But I wanted one that was perfect enough that people could read it seamlessly and understand the method. Issues I wanted to solve was the issue of space being involved in time travel. You cannot travel through time without traveling through space because, if you were to go from this exact instant or this exact place where I am right now, for example, to 3 days from now, the Earth would have moved. So you would be in outer space. Yep. So, and people, it's almost impossible to calculate for this speed of the universe and how, the planets, everything moving around. So we need to come up with a system where you can travel through space every time you're also traveling through time. And that's how I came up with my anchor-based time travel theory. And it also allowed me to play spatially with the characters. That it basically works on if you have an anchor, some sort of item that is not moving through time, you contact it and you end up in the same relative location to that object wherever it is. It's moving, you're jumping through time, and you're ending up back where connected in the same location, essentially, relative to that object. The fun part about that is that object can move. If it's a kitchen table, it might still be in the same place. If it might be, some you end up in the new location. So there's a lot of dangers, there's a lot of factors that go into that, and it was really fun as a writer to play with that in good ways and add danger for the characters. So it was consistent, and I think it's something that the reader can buy into fairly easily and understand. And then, from there, it's just a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, that's what I really liked, was the ability to get your characters into trouble. And what I really like about you as a writer is that you really torture your protagonists. And that sounds awful, that you're torturing what some people consider in their heads to be some kind of real life human being. But a story is only good if you start torturing those characters. It's going to be easy, then I'm out. I don't want to read that. And that's something I enjoyed in both of your novels, was the fact that you just kept throwing stones at these guys.
Right.
You just thought, oh, they're on the home run now. No, no, they're not on the home run. And I love this. I love this idea that the characters can work with and against those anchors. That a future them, for example, could leave an anchor in a certain place, and they don't even know where they're going to end up because that anchor is, but they've got a photograph of it. They've got a journal entry or something like that.
And that's one of the struggles for Ben as a character. He's not an especially organized person.
Yeah.
The main character is not, as precise as some of the other people that are teaching him. His mentors are a little bit more organized and better at it. So he's, as a novice, it adds danger just because he's inexperienced, and there's so many different ways he can potentially kill himself. But it also helps put limitations on the story, which is great. As an adventure, you want it to be dangerous. And by limiting how much time they can travel forward and backward, and also having the dangers inherent in this method, it keeps them sharp, and makes it so that you can't just jump willy-nilly everywhere you want to go and have it be easy. You have to really think it through, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you've also limited them just a few years at a time, and they have annoying things like the power running down, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you don't make it easy for them.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things. Any type of story, I was thinking about this earlier. Like, if you have a hero and they're too invulnerable, they're too perfect. Like if Superman, for example, is a hard time fearing for him because he's just got it too easy. There's not really much you can do to hurt him. He needs limitations, like what I gave him kryptonite. So I love working on the limitations for my heroes and making sure that they are challenged every step of the way.
Yeah, and you do still go into the complexities of things like alternate time streams and things like that, and you have a sort of this kind of interesting nomenclature for those, which kind of lost me, I'm afraid. I mean,
there's, as long as people can, I wanted to make it so that it made sense, and the people that, I think there are a lot of people like you and I who do pick apart time travel novels. Like we look at it, we want it to make sense. Other people don't really care. They just want a good story, and they can just flow along with it. And they can, if they don't quite get it, they can just breeze over that part. And the story still makes sense, and they still enjoy it. And that's what I really wanted. I wanted to satisfy both in the sense that the people that were like us who do want to wrap our heads around it if we want to spend the time on it, it should still make sense. And I really wanted that to be the case in this series. So I worked very hard on that, even if some people might just skim right over it and just go for the adventure. But I wanted to make sure that it worked on a fundamental level.
Yeah. So, I mean, you very deliberately chose to go and do a series of time travel books. What was your starting point with that? Why time travel?
There was, I think part of it was that I love the idea of continuing to open more doors. I liked the idea.
Hang on a second. You're going to have to go back on that one. We just got a bit of an outage there. Sorry.
Sure, no worries. What I was saying is that I like the idea or the concept of opening a door that will then lead to more doors. I like the idea that the premise of the story allows for more adventure. Like, for example, J.K. Rowling, when she wrote the Harry Potter series, she said her premise is, okay, magic is possible. And therefore, as a reader, once you buy into that, what are all the other things that are now possible? And she shows us a whole world of magic, and people are using it for amazing things and small things. They're washing their dishes with it. It's a lifestyle at that point. And she's opened up a whole world of magic. And that was one of the things that I really wanted to see in time travel that I hadn't seen done very often, was time travel as a lifestyle. Time travel as a continuing adventure, not something that's And one of the most common storylines is, protagonist A jumps to the past or the future, spends the majority of the novel or the story there, and then gets home at the end. And they don't necessarily continue time traveling or time travel while they're there. And I really wanted to see an adventure story where time travel can be continuous. It can be useful. It can be something that you use every day. And I hadn't seen it done before. I had looked a lot over the bookshelves and said, if I don't see this happening, then there's a need for it. Maybe I should write this story. So that's kind of the idea that got me started on it. Yeah. And then as I wrote it, just more and more ideas come. Once you open that door, like I said, it's a Pandora's box of things that you can potentially deal with. And as a storyline, that's with the repercussions of what he's started. So it's fun. It's fun to work on. And it's fun as an author, as a writer, to think about those things, all the potential possibilities that I'm dealing with.
We just had another bit of a break there. I'll tell you what, I'm going to change rooms. I don't care about the continuity. I'm going to change rooms, and I'm going to plug it into the internet. So once you're in the closing stages of writing in times like these, when did the Chronothon occur to you? What were you thinking? What more you wanted to do with these characters, or was this right at the start of the series that you thought, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do the Chronothon, then something else?
No, it was definitely a progression, and I didn't even understand how I was going to end in times like these until about halfway through it. It was one of those things where you started the story. I knew generally what I wanted to do with the characters, but actually only got about 8 chapters into in times like these, and then I actually put it down for quite a while, over a year. But I was continuing to think about the idea and the concepts, and I think some of the other seeds of the rest of this series came to me during that time. And when I went back to writing, I had a stronger direction, and I finished the book in times like these, in maybe 8 months or so from chapter 10 through the end, which is the bulk of the book. But it was, again, I was on a schedule at that point. I was in writer's group, like I said, and we were really working hard at it. And I came up with the idea for the Chronothon while I was still finishing at times like these, and it was mostly just, like I said, I've opened this door. What are some of the potential things we can have these characters do? And a lot of it was just for me. Where would I want to go? What would I want to see if I could time travel? There's those questions that, and in this case, it was, well, why pick one? Why pick one place? Why not send this protagonist through a bunch of different places and have him deal with repercussions of that all the way through? And for me, I was surprised to find that no one else had done that. No one else had done a time travel adventure race. And I looked for one, and to my knowledge, there isn't another story like this out there. So that was even more inspiration to do it and to do it well, to satisfy that need out there. And I think that people have enjoyed it so far and really liked the concept and where it's going. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was actually going to be, that segues quite nicely onto my next question, which is, where would you go in time? What would your preference be? If you had to go back in time, for example.
Well, I certainly think that the book is somewhat of a giveaway to my own personality, in that the things that I was curious about sort of ended up in the book. Things that I wanted to research or would have liked to see ended up there. So a lot of the various levels of the race are places that I would enjoy knowing more about. And some of it part of it, lies in the research as a writer. Where do you want to spend? Because it takes so much time to research things and do it well. And sometimes you have help. There are other blogs or researchers who have done some of the work for you, and you get to glean from their knowledge, and which I certainly did in some of the levels of the Chronothon. But those time periods, you have to do your time and do your research, and it's a lot of work as a writer. So you want to spend that time somewhere that's interesting, and it should end up interesting for the reader as a result. And so other than the places that show up in the Chronothon, I think that I would definitely like to go more to the future. If I could travel, I think I would be very curious to see what the future has in store for us.
How far into the future would you want to go?
That's a good question, too. I think that I was discussing with a friend recently that I think that we live in a very great time. Right now is an amazing time to be alive, and there's certainly wonderful things going on in our own century. But if I've always been a big fan of space travel and the idea of space travel, so I think I would love to see what the future has in store for us in that area. We're so far away from anyone else in the universe. We live a long way from our nearest neighbors. So it would be curious to go far enough into the future to see when that gap gets closed, when we might actually make contact with, who else might be out there. It might be a terrible idea. I don't know. It may go very, very badly when that happens. But I would be curious to see it.
Well, yeah, I think it's an Arthur C. Clarke quote, wasn't it? Something like, if aliens turn up and say that they want to serve mankind, you've got to ask, is that fried, baked, what?
It is a big question. It's certainly a big question about whether we want to be discovered. Maybe the fact that we're in this little corner of the universe has been to our great advantage this whole time, and we're just asking for trouble by looking for our neighbors. But we'll see.
Well, I mean, we must look, if you think about it, in the last, let's say 100 years, we must look to an extraterrestrial radio astronomer, for example, like a radio star that's just slowly heating up, and when we're giving out so much in the way of radio waves and stuff like that they can't fail to notice us now, and they would surely notice that the nature of those radio waves is becoming, it's going across specific areas of spectrum. It's starting to go digital. They would notice that. I mean, this is a great big red flag sort of waving, hey, here we are.
Right.
And I guess what, some scientists at, SETI, or the critics of SETI say is, well, where are those radio stars? We're not seeing them. But, taking, 80 years gets us not even probably even outside our local sort of group of stars. I mean, it's nothing. But so if
they'll definitely hear our oldest transmissions, and
yeah,
they'll get, and that's an interesting idea that they're actually hearing across time. That we're contacting, and if we do hear them, we'll be hearing their past in the same way, which would be.
Yeah, well, yeah. You look at oh God, was it last week? I think there was a big announcement about they'd seen in the deep dark past of the universe, they'd seen a black hole that really shouldn't have been there that early in the universe, because we're seeing into the past. And I don't think a lot of people kind of understand that we almost are time traveling. And we are time traveling when astronomers look, with really powerful telescopes. But that's a bit of a diversion there. But we both share a huge interest in that area. Yeah. So if you could jump just the once into the past, where would you go?
Coming back or having to stay there?
Okay, two separate questions, and you can take your fiance with you. She will watch this, I'm sure.
Sure, eventually. Yeah, I've got somewhat of a personal tragedy in my own life. When I lost my father when I was very young. Yeah. And I think if it was a short-term jump, I think that I would definitely like to have met him. He passed away when I was about 3, and from all accounts was a great guy. So I would have loved to had a day, of chatting with him. I don't know that that's not necessarily changed anything about my own life and the way that it's gone. I certainly, love the life I'm living now. But it would have been certainly nice. And I think that's one of the things that time travel offers is kind of a way to see people or talk to people that are no longer with us. And that's one of the fascinating aspects of the genre when we write is, the concept that maybe death is not final. If time is flexible. Everyone's sort of existing simultaneously, and could you bend those rules and go say hello to someone who, is no longer with us? And I think that's probably what I would try to do. And I think Stephanie would probably be happy to go along for the ride in that scenario and meet some people that were important parts of our past that we don't get to spend time with anymore.
Yeah. And if you could jump into the future just once and not come back, how far do you think you would go? We talked about the interstellar travel stuff, but civilization is cyclical.
It is, and I think the next big jump for us is, and this is something that I think sci-fi writers always speculate about, is what is the next big thing? And a lot of times we miss it. I think people that wrote science fiction in the 60s missed the computers were coming, or they missed that the internet would exist. There were certain big things that happened. So it's fun to sort of speculate what's in store for the human race. But one of my ideas would be, that I think is plausible and I think will happen eventually, is that, the birth of artificial intelligence and the birth of, sentient machines. And I'd be curious to see that. I'd like to see what the future has in store for us when it comes to recognizing on other forms of intelligence. And I even believe this with animals too. Like if you really start to understand the language of animals better and how to communicate with other species other than our own on a really, on a more thorough level. I'd be curious to see what else we would be learning in the future from that. I would like to go far enough in the future that we figured out some of those questions.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There was something on Radio 4 here yesterday, just looking back at what Douglas Adams had predicted in 2001. And, it was kind of interesting. But, this is a guy who predicted the ebook when he wrote Hitchhiker's Guide back in, 1977, 78. I mean, wow, not bad. But, he missed some other things, but hey, he did pretty well as a futurologist.
Yeah. That's the big game as a writer. It's somewhat intimidating as a writer too, but it's also a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think H.G. Wells predicted some 100 odd years ago, I think he predicted something like the internet, or something like, more like Wikipedia. I think it was, I mean, but it depends. It depends which way you make the prediction. I mean, people are always saying, oh, well, where are these, where are these TV screens the size of skyscrapers? Well, in actual fact, we can do that. We have projectors, because it's just, who could be bothered to build an LCD that big? We project. So it depends how broad we want to be and how critical. But hey, the future's coming at us at a rate of knots.
According to Back to the Future, we're in the future now, so it's a big year.
Yeah, just since we started this conversation, damn it, we're in the future. But I think Douglas Coupland brought, he had an article just a few weeks ago about the fact that we suddenly seem to be living in the future, and I don't know how well wired we are for it. I think some of us aren't prepared. I'm not pointing any fingers at religious people there. Anyway, so tell me 3 novels that have been the most influential for you. 3 of your favorite novels.
3 of my favorite novels.
Or writers. That might be easier.
One of my all-time favorite books is The Never-Ending Story by Michael Ende. As a kid, definitely broadened my mind into the idea of really good world building. And a lot of us, knew the movie growing up. I grew up in the 80s, and the movie was a big thing. But when I read the book, that was a huge influence for me. It was one of those concepts where, again, he opens a door to a world that is made up of anything we could possibly imagine. And I loved it as a person who loved books. That's the book for you, because it's all about a kid who loves books and getting caught up in a world where stories exist for real. And everything can be connected to anything. And he does a great thing where he starts little tangents, but then we'll say, but that's another story and will be told another time.
Yeah.
It just leaves it, really has one. It's a never-ending story. But it's open to interpretation somewhat, as to there will be ongoing adventures. There will be continuous adventures that will never really end. And I love that idea as a world, and the imagination that took for him to create that world. And that was a big inspiration for me as a kid, as a reader, but then also later on as a writer, and what I wanted to see and what I really loved to see in fiction. So that was a big inspiration for me. Completely different genre, but I loved The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. Taught me a lot about characters. I don't necessarily subscribe to her philosophy, but I really admired her writing in that particular book, in the sense that she created larger-than-life characters who defined the story through their personalities, that the world was shaped by those particular characters. And I thought that was very good writing, and it also just makes you think. It's a book that makes you think, whether you want to agree with it or not. It forces you to deal with your own concepts of the world and why you believe what you believe. And I think that that's a powerful thing for a book to do. So that was a big influence for me. I read that, I think, 4 times as a teenager.
Wow.
And I think I got something different out of it every time I read it. And third book, I think I would say To Kill a Mockingbird is on my top of my list, I think, because it is just such a moving story that deals with people on a human level and addresses a larger-than-life issue like, slavery and segregation, but it does it through the eyes of a child, and it gives us such strong characters. Atticus Finch is one of my all-time favorite heroes. It's just someone who works for justice in a non-violent way, and just is a fundamentally good human being, and and the power of what that can do in the world, in the sense that one particular person can change things, and even if he can't change the outcome of this trial or whatever it is, he changes his children. And so she did an amazing thing with that novel, and I think it's obviously affected thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people that have read it. And it's
30 odd million or something like that, isn't it? It's
yeah, I'm sure how many copies she's sold over the.
Yeah, it's huge amounts.
Yeah, Matt, but it was an amazing story. And I think that's the real inspiration, is that you can find stories that change the way you think or have that power to make you see the world differently. That's a big inspiration, I think.
Yeah, and that came along just at exactly the right time. It was like it was shot into that era of history, like an idea detonation, and it did a whole lot of good. And it's a fantastically powerful story. So, moving on to book 3, the unwritten book, Nathan.
Yeah.
What's next?
Well, like I said, this story and time travel in general as a concept, like I said, it opens up a Pandora's box, as you will, of possibilities. And I think that now the characters that I've introduced to this world now have to deal with the fact that they actually live in it, and they can't put the lid back on. That there will be repercussions for their actions, and even though that they have gotten this far, their problems are not over. And of course, like I said, I like compounding their lives and making them more difficult. So I'm going to bring that a little bit home to them, in the sense that they don't necessarily have to leave home to find adventure. Now adventure's coming to them, and problems are coming to them. And I think that there's so many fun things to tackle with time travel as a genre, and so many potential problems that I haven't even begun to deal with them all. And I think that's what I'm having the most fun with in book 3 is complicating Ben's home life. How to have, how do you have a relationship as a time traveler with another time traveler when the person can get mad and slam the door and vanish? Like how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the fact that there might be multiple versions of you running around? Those are, if you all want to, share the same apartment. It's kind of it's just a lot of fun for me to think about repercussions, and also there were some things that occurred during the Chronothon. I won't spoil any of that book, but there were some things that occurred during that didn't necessarily get resolved completely, and so Ben is dealing with that and trying to discover what he needs to accomplish next, what his next steps are, and how to get his life back together in the way it should be. So that's my main. And I do expect to expand the world as well. The world is constantly expanding. Even though he's trying to get it back smaller again, it continues to grow, and the characters continue to grow. And I had a lot of fun introducing new characters in the Chronothon. And, the cast has definitely grown. And some of the favorites will be showing back up again, and we'll see how it all washes out. So.
Yeah, he owes a few people favors, and a few people owe him favors, and but I guess without spoiling anything, I guess at least if his love life could be a little bit uncertain, he gets on well with his father-in-law or potential father-in-law, I guess.
It would be an important relationship to maintain.
Yeah, yes, that's kind of funny because you are yourself getting married in September this year.
I am. I will be. Labor Day this year for us. Beginning of September. Yeah, I'll be getting married.
It's the beginning of another great adventure.
It is. I'm very excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think, Steph and I have known each other for quite a while, so we're ready to move on and enjoy the next adventure together. So
great stuff. And I know she's a big fan of your work too. That's
she is. Yeah, very supportive. And it's hard to underemphasize the importance of having someone who is willing to support you as a writer. And just encourage you in that. It takes a lot of understanding sometimes. One thing about it is your head is constantly somewhere else, and she does a good job of putting up with the fact that my mind wanders, and it will be some other time or some other place, other than the present. So.
Although I guess on the plus side is that it means you're in rather than kind of out with the boys and things like that.
There's only so many people who will put up with my rambling about time travel at the bar. So.
Great stuff. Well, Nathan, thank you very much for taking the time out today to talk to me. It's been a really good, revealing interview, and
it's been a pleasure. Really,
that's absolutely terrific, and we'll be and we'll be in touch real soon.
All right, sounds good, Mark.
In Times Like These and the Chronothon are available in all major ebook formats or as paperbacks.